It's 2002 and mall culture is all the rage. A store for every person, every style, every aesthetic. As you walk around browsing store windows, a distinctive smell hits your nose, the fresh, masculine blend of musk, citrus, and beach. Your eyes move to the windows, which are blocked out by brown shutters. Your eyes then stop on two young, shirtless, tanned, muscular men wearing fitted jeans, flip-flops, and a smile. Welcome to Abercrombie and Fitch, they tell you, as you're transported away from the cold winter air and into an oasis of sex, discrimination, and pictures of naked men. We're talking about the scandal that rocked early 2000s popular kids style in this week's episode of Two Crime Newsies. Hey everyone, I'm Jen.
Hi, I'm Tina. Do you want to cut this out and just stop it and go shopping?
I know, right? I wrote the intro and I was just like, oh yeah, this is gonna work really well.
I'm ready to go.
This week we're talking about a show that we watched on Netflix called White Hot, The Rise and Fall of Abercrombie and Fitch.
This was a fun one.
It really was. It was released in 2022. And in the description, I think this totally sums it up perfectly. It says, this documentary goes behind the scenes
Love it.
of the clothing brand.
This is my kind of crime. I love a scandal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's no blood. There's no, creep. Well, there's some creepers.
There are some creepers.
There's some creepers, but not the murdery kind.
I think, yes, definitely more your style, where mine is more of the murdery type thing.
Yeah, definitely. The scandal ones are right up my alley, and I am here for it.
Good. Well, I'm glad because this was, like you said, a really good episode. When we were young, it was totally like our style. It's cuts of super hot guys with no shirts.
Mm-hmm.
There are deer heads. There's naked women standing in the wilderness.
What?
A keg. And it ends with a pair of white Abercrombie & Fitch underpants on fire. That's the intro.
That's the intro. What a way to jump into it.
I think the thing that I enjoyed probably the most out of all this, which Tina can vouch because she walked into the house earlier and I was playing one of the songs, was the music in this show.
The best part of the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
And I did write in my notes, it's funny how music can transport you back to a different time. And my husband was watching this with me for a little bit, and he is obsessed with this music. And it's probably the only reason he even stayed and watched with me. And he was trying to figure out if you can get the soundtrack
for the show.
To this show. And I said he's ridiculous. There's no way there's a soundtrack for this show. And again, I was wrong.
I would totally listen to the soundtrack. We're talking, it played songs like My Own Worst Enemy by Lit.
Mm-hmm.
It played Steal My Sunshine by Len.
Mm-hmm.
And then the song that totally made this show was Summer Girls by LFO.
It's such a stupid song, but it's a fun one. And it definitely reminds me of some good old days.
I like girls that wear Abercrombie and Fitch.
That's the line.
I take it if I had one wish.
For anyone interested, there is a soundtrack. I found a playlist on Spotify. It's the same name as the documentary. It's called White Hot, The Rise and Fall of Abercrombie and Fitch, the soundtrack.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm serious.
That's pretty awesome.
I know.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, like you said, the music was
top
awesome.
notch.
Yeah, for real. Okay, Abercrombie & Fitch was the hottest retailer while we were in high school. I graduated high school in 2004. And I remember at that time, it was the brand that popular kids were wearing. In this show, several people were saying that the brand was aspirational. It had that all-American youth look.
And I'm giggling because you're younger than me.
I am younger than you.
And I wrote high school because I read your notes while I was watching this.
Yeah.
And I do not recall Abercrombie and Fitch. I call it Abercrombie. Abercrombie.
Yes.
It's so much easier to say Abercrombie. Abercrombie.
Aber.
I don't remember Abercrombie until the 2000s-ish. Those were my college years. I did find a Forbes article that mentioned that it peaked around 2012. So way too old. I was too old for Abercrombie, I think, back then. Like,
No.
that's my 30s.
I mean, I remember hearing about Abercrombie when I was like in junior high. People were wearing Abercrombie and Fitch even when I was in junior high.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like, it was around for a while.
I do not remember it from when I was that young. Maybe it's because my mom was like, absolutely not. I'm not paying $100 for a pair of jeans for you.
Yeah. We do learn several things in this show that we will get into that made a lot of people question this brand. And there were some things that, looking back after watching this documentary, I was like, I should have caught on to this too. Like, I didn't even recognize some of this. Well, the show opens with a guy named Jose, who is a former recruiter for Abercrombie and Fitch, which I find an interesting thing that a clothing mall store has recruiters. But he says he would approach people who would be walking through the mall, and he would tell them, like, hey, I'm looking for someone to work 5, 10, 15 hours a week at the store. We're hiring good looking people and you fit that criteria. Are you interested?
Do you think that would be like a line that some guy would give you?
I mean,
like, what if you thought that he was just hitting on you?
I mean, I've heard some lines in my day.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Hey, you want to work 5, 10 hours?
We're looking for some good looking people.
I think if I was approached like that, I'd be like, maybe, potentially.
Maybe.
So the show says that Abercrombie and Fitch marketed to those people in like the boarding school, upper crust, preppy fraternity, sorority people, wealthy people. And throughout the show, it's very talked about that Abercrombie and Fitch was marketed basically toward white people. When I think of Abercrombie and Fitch, I think about New England preppy type people. That's what I think.
I think of just teens, young people, I guess. Yeah, I mean, their ads were all white people.
They were. And the ads were not conventional ads. For instance, you would have Calvin Klein, for instance, back in the day, had like Mark Wahlberg, who was Marky Mark at the time, in these like pants dropping ads where he'd be like in his boxer shorts.
I'm okay with it.
I think everybody is okay with it. But like, that was risque. But Abercrombie and Fitch pushed that even further. They had, listen to this, so they would market people completely naked to sell clothes, which is this complete craziness.
It's absurd.
But it worked.
And
it pushed the boundary.
Whose idea was this? Who was this marketing person that was like, this is how we're going to sell clothes? We're just going to parade naked people around not wearing our clothes.
But it worked.
I know.
And, like, if you look at the old Abercrombie and Fitch bags where you would, go into the store and buy something and you come out with the bag, there was a couple of things about the bag. One, I felt like, I remember when I was in high school, I went to Abercrombie and bought something. And I think I bought like a scarf or something. And I walked out of the store and I was like, sweet, look at me. I'm so cool. Like, I'm holding this giant Abercrombie and Fitch bag for a scarf that did not need a giant bag. But you wanted the bag.
You wanted the naked man on the bag.
You did. And people would hang, like in my high school, we had girls who would hang up the pictures in the locker. The big thing was using the bags as like a textbook wrapper around your book.
Did people really do that?
Yes.
You saw people do
yes.
that? That's crazy.
I mean, I had pictures from Abercrombie and Fitch in my locker in high school because the guys were super hot. And for a high school girl, you were like, look at this naked dude in only his underwear or barely underwear or sometimes not even underwear. Yeah, it was a total thing.
I didn't have anything in my locker, just my books.
Okay. Moving on. Really?
Yeah. I didn't hang up anything in my locker. There were no pictures. There was no knick-knack thingies. Like, it was strictly books.
Well, that's kind of boring, Tina.
I know. I didn't know this was a thing.
It was totally a thing. It showcased your vibe.
Here's the thing. Like,
Which I know you hate that word.
I hate that word. I am already miserable in school. I'm not going to try to make it a happy place. I decorated my room at home, my happy place.
So Abercrombie and Fitch, they basically catered to the cool guy. In the documentary, multiple people who worked for Abercrombie and Fitch stated they wanted the cool guy to be wearing Abercrombie and Fitch because other people at school would want to be the cool guy or the cool girl.
Right.
It's the never-ending cycle of basically high school, in my opinion. We hear from a former male model named Bobby Blankenship, who I'm going to refer to as the armpit guy.
That's his name.
Yeah, because, and another thing that I liked about the armpit guy was in one of the scenes in the show, did you notice he was petting like a fox, like a stuffed
taxidermy fox?
Yeah.
I did notice that. That was completely random.
But I feel like that randomness showcases Abercrombie and Fitch, because you would see these ads of like guys being like, hey, I'm hanging out in this tree. Come take a picture of me. Or, hey, let's jump into a dog pile and like wrestle each other. Oh, hold on. We're just in underpants.
When they talk about this later in the show, it is so funny because when you see the ad, you don't think about how ridiculous it probably is for someone to actually do this and then someone else is taking a picture of it.
Yeah. It blows my mind, but it got people into the stores.
Yeah, and there's the scene with Bobby. So when we first see him, they show his picture on the Abercrombie
He's
bag.
like sniffing his armpit.
Yeah, it looks like he's sniffing his armpit. His arm is over his head and he's laying on his back. And then they cut to him in real time and he's imitating that pose, but he's standing up and he's got his arm over his head and he's having that like wistful, far off glance that he's giving, and his goofy smile, and it just is so funny. Like he's trying to be sexy, but it just looks so silly.
I think he's adorable.
He is adorable.
Like, he looks like he could be a kindergarten teacher now. Like he really does.
He really does.
Bobby says that it makes small town guys feel big. They're making it big by wearing Abercrombie and Fitch. We meet another model named Ryan Daharsh.
These names were pretty difficult. So no one ever pronounced it for us in the show. So they spelled it out for you and you were on your own from there.
Yeah. When we meet him in the show, he's wearing an all black outfit, kind of like a punk rock shirt. He's got black sweatbands on his wrists. He has a black and camo trucker hat.
And in your notes, you wrote, he's still hot.
He is. Sorry to my husband, but yes, he is. I remember this guy's specifically images from Abercrombie and Fitch.
You do?
I do. And like he was one of the ones that like I had taped up in my locker.
That's funny.
And he said it wasn't a big dream for him to be an Abercrombie and Fitch model. And he was discovered while he was drunk at a bar.
Wow, we need to go out to bars more often.
I want to be drunk at a bar with all these people.
Maybe we can be discovered. One of the former models says it perfectly. He has a line that says, they made so much money marketing their clothes, but using models with no clothes on.
It's so true.
I cannot believe that someone came up with this and they ran with it and it worked.
It worked. It worked. A guy named Alan, who was the fashion marketing and advertising exec from Abercrombie for the longest time, had said that the clothing was truly nothing special. It was about the label. That's what made it super special. You wanted that shirt that said Abercrombie across the chest.
And it was just made in China, probably really
cheap.
Yeah, awful shirt that was going to fall apart in the wash in a few weeks. Real quick, I want to go back and mention, did you see those pictures that they were showing us on the screen of fully naked women?
I saw them, yes. I don't remember those in store, but clearly...
Where were they using those? Were those in magazines? Were they like on a wall in a store and it was so dark in the store that you kind of didn't really notice them?
I mean, I vaguely remember while I was in high school going into Abercrombie Abercrombie and Fitch, and one, it was like the wafting. You walk in and the cologne just whacks you in the face.
That's a really memorable smell.
It is. It's such that was the like fierce cologne, and I truly, that smell is it smells so good.
It lured you in.
It did. If the two half naked guys outside in jeans and flip flops didn't get you in the door, at least the smell was going to get you in the door.
What's funny is that they mentioned that the half naked guys standing outside of the door could be intimidating to some people. So I wonder if it also kept people out. Like,
I feel like it probably kept parents out.
I could see that.
I mean, truly, like if my kids were like, let's go into the store, I'd be like, why are there naked dudes standing outside trying to get me in? Like, that's kind of weird.
Would you let your kid go in there by themselves?
No, not at all. They really did have some super, super smart people doing their marketing. That early 2000s style of low-rise jeans, tank tops, midriff showing, a little bit of belly button was really pushed in the culture by Abercrombie and Fitch, especially using celebrities at that time. They had huge names.
I had no idea until they popped them up on the screen how many were in their ads.
Yeah.
The guy from Gossip Girl.
Who's also on that. Yes.
Yeah. Taylor Swift.
I know, which is shocking. It's Taylor Swift.
She was in their ads. Jennifer Lawrence.
Huge movie star.
Yep. Channing Tatum.
With all of his clothes. I mean, he kind of fits right in though. He did that stripper movie.
Magic Mike.
I never watched that.
No, I didn't either. I'm shocked you never watched that.
Why are you shocked?
Why am I shocked? That's totally up your alley. You were so excited just to watch this show.
I was super excited to watch this show. So Channing Tatum with his like clothes taking off movies, I feel like he kind of fits the Abercrombie and Fitch.
Tatum clothes taking off movies. Like it's a genre. They also had Ashton Kutcher,
huge star,
and Heidi Klum,
who's a massive supermodel.
Massive.
Yeah. So the show makes it very big using the music, the cuts of different series.
Well, they say that young people across the country are wearing Abercrombie because here's the thing. There was no social media at the time back then. But they were marketing on MTV, on the Video Music Awards, the show that was called House of Style that was on MTV, and TRL. Do you remember TRL?
Oh, yeah, with, what is his name? Carson Daly.
Carson Daly. It was short for Total Request Live. It was a show that played the top music videos every afternoon. Carson Daly was the host. I adored Carson Daly.
I thought he was great.
Such a boy next door, nice looking guy. No?
I mean, he wasn't like taking off his clothes, but
yeah, that's what I mean. Oh my gosh.
Tina, this is a spicy episode.
Trends that normally would be popular on the East Coast or the West Coast are now popular everywhere because people are seeing Abercrombie and Fitch on MTV. These clothes are being modeled on these shows and on these celebrities.
Mm-hmm. And with that, the mall culture in America really exploded. It's a place where you shop with your family. It's a place where you went to hang out with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also another place that you went to the mall because you wanted to be seen. You wanted to be seen carrying certain bags from certain stores around the mall.
I mean, if I had it my way, I wouldn't carry any bags.
You'd be like, I want somebody to carry my bags.
Yes.
No, but do you remember that though? Like, I remember distinctly like going into stores. Like, I remember the first time I bought something at Victoria's Secret and was like, I want to walk around because I have this bag. I feel so cool.
No, so I had a different experience than you because you grew up in a city with a mall.
Yeah.
So you knew people here. You had friends that lived here. I grew up in a city that did not have a mall. So we had to drive an hour away to get to the mall. We mean business when we're at the mall, okay? We have to get in and get out and drive home. We're on a mission. You have never seen Mom and I at the mall. I mean, we are quick on our feet, okay? We're from one end to the other. We're in and out of stores. We even make trips back to the car to drop off bags because we don't want to carry them things. They're heavy.
What did you do in small town USA?
We had to come an hour away to go to the mall.
So it was like a prearranged thing.
It was definitely a prearranged thing. It was no spontaneous, hey, let's go to the mall. Let's go hang out at the mall. No, it was, you had to arrange a day and a time to get it done. And then when you were there, it was definitely no playtime. You're on a mission to get what you need and get home before it gets dark.
That's fascinating. So with that whole mall culture thing, I think what best described a mall in that time period, because I feel like a lot of our listeners are of the younger crowd who apparently think we're really funny.
What? People think we're funny?
People think we're funny.
I'm so flattered.
I know.
Young people think we're funny.
Young people think we're funny, Tina. We're making it hip.
Oh my gosh.
The fact that I just said that makes us not hot.
Oh yeah, I don't think people use the word hip anymore.
Okay, but I think for all those folks who don't know about mall culture, it's basically, imagine a search engine that you can walk through. It's an online catalog that is all things in one place, okay? The mall back in the day catered to all styles. You had specialty stores like Hot Topic. You would go to Hot Topic if you wanted that punk look. You went to PacSun if you wanted that like surfer, beachy, SoCal look. You went to Abercrombie and Fitch if you wanted the preppy look.
Robin Given, I believe is her name, a senior critic at large for the Washington Post, says that Abercrombie created a middle ground between the sex that Calvin Klein was selling and the all-American preppiness that Ralph Lauren was selling. And I love how she says the fashion is selling us the feeling of belonging, of confidence, of cool, and of sex appeal. And the very last thing that it's selling us are garments.
Which is crazy.
We are suckers.
So much so.
We're buying into this.
So we want to make note that the show again is called White Hot, The Rise and Fall of Abercrombie and Fitch. The show tried to have the former CEO Mike Jeffries comment, but he apparently declined to comment for the documentary. Mike Jeffries took over Abercrombie and Fitch from Lex Wexler in 1992. Wexler is basically part of the Limited family brand, which includes like Victoria's Secret, the Limited, Bath and Body Works, so forth. At the time, Abercrombie and Fitch was failing. Abercrombie and Fitch had been around since the 1800s, and it had been an outdoor style store that sold like clothes, camping stuff, fishing stuff, and catered to like the elite sportsmen. Mm-hmm. People like Teddy Roosevelt, Ernest Hemingway, they were the ones buying Abercrombie and Fitch.
It's crazy to think of Ernest Hemingway wearing Abercrombie and Fitch.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. But when Jeffries took over Abercrombie and Fitch, he rebranded it to make it this young, hip, preppy brand that we saw throughout this documentary. The former VP of merchandising, her name is Cindy, reported directly to Mike Jeffries, the CEO, and she said that Jeffries wanted to be the coolest brand out there for 18 to 22-year-olds.
He had a formula. His formula was connecting the heritage of Abercrombie and Fitch, add in elitism and sexual imagery.
Hot, naked guys.
It was meant to be exclusive. And he also, we see what would you call it, like a chart on TV, mm-hmm. where they show us the breakdown of what Abercrombie is. So we see that Abercrombie is what they wanted to be, a golden retriever, not a poodle. I have a toy poodle, by the way. I was a little offended by that.
I mean, I have a golden retriever.
Yeah, you would. I love your golden retriever. He's awesome. And then Abercrombie is also a Jeep Wrangler, not a sedan.
My husband used to drive a Jeep Wrangler, and I now drive a sedan.
So they're saying we're catering to the people who own golden retrievers and drive Jeep Wranglers, not the people who own poodles and drive a sedan.
Hold on, do I drive a sedan?
No,
I
you drive an SUV.
That's it.
And here we get another great line from Robin Gibbon. She says the goal of the fashion industry is not to give people what they're asking for, but to make them ask for what you're offering.
Makes sense.
I feel so duped.
You want to tell them what they should think is cool.
That's true. And all fashion, apparently, all fashion places do this. And I'm just going to be looking at people sideways now when I hand over my credit card. Like, are you trying to dupe me?
Fact.
I really like this shirt, but is it a dupe?
So on the show, we hear from a guy, Christopher Clayton, who's also another Abercrombie and Fitch recruiter. And to fit into this golden retriever Jeep Wrangler mentality that Abercrombie and Fitch had, he said that Abercrombie and Fitch wanted to recruit good-looking people. He says that they literally had a book on what good looking is. The look basically was that Abercrombie and Fitch wanted people in the store to be an inspiration to the customer. And to create that, they had to be
neatly combed, attractive, natural, and wear a classic hairstyle.
Men and women were not allowed to have dreadlocks. Jewelry had to be super simple and classic, meaning women could wear a thin, short, delicate silver necklace.
That's very specific.
I'm wearing a little simple gold necklace.
You know.
I'd be out.
You're out.
I'd be out.
Mm-hmm.
Gold chains are not acceptable for men. Brand reps, which are the employees, are required to wear appropriate undergarments at all times. Which
what does that mean?
They need to be wearing the right bras and underpants.
Like, how do you know if they're in the right bras and underpants?
I mean, it's Abercrombie and Fitch. Everybody is apparently naked all the time.
That's true.
And watches should be understated and cool.
Whatever that means.
So they had 3 main points to be the Abercrombie and Fitch look. 1, natural. 2, American. 3, classic. That was the Abercrombie and Fitch look.
Sure. Okay, natural, classic, yeah, sure. American, I feel like the great thing about America is everybody is so different.
100%.
How is someone American?
We're literally a melting pot. This has been something that's been spoken about for hundreds of years, that America is a melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
But what the show truly meant by American, which is something that is also stated over and over and over in this show, is that by the all-American look, Abercrombie and Fitch meant white.
So Abercrombie micromanaged everything, they said, from the store down to who is cleaning up in the back of the store. We hear from Toya Spencer, who's a former merchandise administrator, and she tells us that stores were pristine and every detail was Mike Jeffries' baby. I mean, he wanted everything to look a certain way at all times.
That all-American, in quotation marks, look.
And that he would do surprise visits to the stores. And the most important thing on those visits was who was working on those days. And they kept some people on staff at the stores just for those visits because they were hot people.
That's crazy.
They didn't care about how much the store was selling. They cared about wanting good-looking people to be working there.
You want to be hot, so you want to go to Abercrombie and Fitch, and so you want to look like these people and spend money there because you want to look like these people.
Yeah, you didn't have to be good at your job. You just had to look good doing it.
That's crazy.
So
crazy. So the photographer who did the majority of work for Abercrombie and Fitch was a guy named Bruce Weber. And in 2014, the show shows us a clip from CBS This Morning where Bruce Weber says he felt men and women need an appreciation of themselves the way they look physically. They want the Abercrombie and Fitch aesthetic. They want to show sexy young people, group front, and in the countryside, which is all things that they showed in these ads and these photos throughout the stores, throughout catalogs, everything like that.
We see an Abercrombie and Fitch marketing video showing men wrapped up together, wrestling in water, underwater. They're wearing shorts. Abercrombie had giant murals in some of their stores of shirtless and what they call homoerotic scenes of men interacting with each other. And we hear from Benoit Denizet Lewis, who is a journalist, say that it was clear to anyone who was paying attention, but the brilliance of the brand was that all that went over their heads of the target customer, the straight college frat bro. That was their target customer. So all of the men being shirtless and interacting with each other, it just went right over their heads that that's what was actually happening.
Bobby Blankenship, the armpit dude, says, I find what he says to be hilarious, that the modeling photography crew would tell the models to be themselves, like climb a tree, swim in the water, randomly do push-ups, anything to get the photographer's attention. Hot guys trying to impress hot chicks. He calls it humanity at its basic level.
That was hilarious.
And that's when the show plays primate monkeys like mating sounds.
Because it's so ridiculous. That's what they're doing. They're acting like monkeys.
We're told that Bruce Weber's photos showed representatives of Abercrombie and Fitch, like the people working at the stores, that they needed to be young, hot, muscular, fit, sporty, preppy, white people. Because at the time, all commercials didn't have anyone of a color. There were no photos of models of color.
Mm-mm.
That's who the company expected recruiters to hire for the stores.
And they say that they knew they were doing something right when the LFO song Summer Girls came out, and one of the lines says, I like girls that wear Abercrombie and Fitch.
I'd take her if I had one wish. Achieving on sunset summer.
I'm never going to listen to that song the same again. Okay, so things are not on the up and up now. Things are headed for a downturn.
Yep. In 2002, graphic tees were all the rage. So they just kept producing them and making them as fast as they could. They were cheap to make, and you could sell them for a massive profit.
85% markup.
That's a lot. Kelly Bloomberg, who's a former graphic design director for Abercrombie and Fitch, said that graphic tees were truly a personality, and you would just continuously pump out these graphic tees. Now, some of these tees were not good. They were not good at all.
And these were employees that were coming up with the stuff that was on these t-shirts.
There were several shirts that had quite a bit of backlash. One of the ones said, Buddha Bash, get your Buddha on the floor. There was another shirt that said, West Virginia, no lifeguards in this gene pool.
That's so bad.
Well, there was another one. Donkey holding a taco with a sombrero that said, Juan, more for the road. Terrible. And then there was another one that said, Wong Brothers Laundry Service. 2 Wongs can make it white.
So bad.
I literally wrote, holy shit. I'm trying to go with our clean rating here.
Yeah.
So holy moly.
There you go.
Terrible.
That is bad.
So we hear from a blogger named Phil Yu, who is known as the Angry Asian Man. And he said, Asian Americans are often taught to keep their head down, don't rock the boat. But he says when he saw that shirt, he knew it was not okay. And that's when we see people start protesting outside Abercrombie and Fitch. They're protesting these Asian shirts. Kelly Bloomberg says that the company pulled the shirts and ended up burning the shirts so no one could get a hold of this. But they kept shirts like the
one for the donkey, whatever, the
one
with the
for
donkey.
The road with the donkey and the sombrero. They kept that in store
because no one was protesting it, I guess.
It's terrible. That stuff is not okay.
So Phil tells us in a press release from Abercrombie stated that they thought Asians would love these shirts.
Baloney.
What in the world? And that's about it. They kind of moved on. And no one really gets in trouble for making these shirts.
Mm-hmm. So now we go to 2003, where we hear from a journalist who worked at the Wall Street Journal named Mo. So she said that while working at the Wall Street Journal, she and a friend went to the American Eagle store while shopping, and they started talking to a manager about how she ended up at American Eagle. And this manager apparently told them that she had been a district manager for Abercrombie and then had moved over. And she said that she was so much happier there because American Eagle allowed her to hire people of all diversities and ethnic backgrounds.
She could hire whoever she wanted.
Whoever she wanted. And so that's when the Wall Street journalist, her name is Mo, started interviewing people who had worked at Abercrombie. And she learned that most people who were recruited for the job were hired based on their looks.
And people were also fired based on their looks.
That's right. Apparently, we learned that managers at these stores had to rank their employees on a scale, right? And the scale was from cool to rocks.
Who is this person coming up with a scale? Are they 13?
I know. And if you're not cool, then you had to get rid of them, okay? So it didn't matter what their sales were. This person could be selling thousands and thousands and thousands. That didn't matter if they were not ranked cool. So it mattered what the company thought you looked like and if you were hot, which that's illegal. You can't do that.
Can you imagine someone, your boss, telling you, here is a list of the people who work here. I need you to rank from cool to rocks. And next to their name, you have to put either that they're cool, they're kind of cool, they're very cool, they're uncool, they're or they rock. I mean, I thought this is something people did in their junior year or their junior high yearbook.
It's ridiculous. A former store employee named Carla says she saw people who definitely had more money than her wearing these clothes. So she wanted to have that look. She said that it was an all-American look, and she considered herself an all-American girl. So she wanted to work there, and she wanted to wear the clothes. She wanted to be part of that Abercrombie and Fitch culture. Carla, the former store employee, now Carla is African American, and she says that she was the only Black person working at the Abercrombie and Fitch store where she worked. She said she was never scheduled a ton of hours. So one day she asked her manager for more day shifts because she was on night shifts. She wasn't a fan of night shifts. And she basically spent her entire shift cleaning. So she talked to the manager, and the manager told her, listen to this nonsense. Carla, you're such a good window washer. I would truly lose it at that point. Like if somebody told me, hey, Jen, you're just a good window washer, I would lose it.
And your job is to sell clothes. And
yeah. She told a friend of hers, and the friend was like, hey, I'll switch shift with you. It's no issue. And so she went back to the manager and was like, hey, my friend, like she works days, she'll switch. And he was like, no. Turns out she was getting less and less shifts after this whole discussion with her boss. And she spoke to her friend about it, and her friend was like, I bet they're not scheduling you because you're Black. And that's when Carla truly, I think, had that like light bulb moment. Mm-hmm. And she says from that day on, she was no longer scheduled for shifts.
I wrote that it has to be a terrible feeling. There's no resignation. There's no official termination. She was, in the terms that people use these days, ghosted by her employer. Can you imagine how that feels as a young person, like in your early 20s? It's like these are people you look up to. This is a place that you look up to, and they're treating you so badly.
They're treating you like crap.
And you didn't do anything. They just stopped giving you shifts and kind of hoped that you'd go away.
Yeah.
That is cold.
It's terrible. So we then go on to hear from a lady named Jennifer, who's a former store employee. Now, she is Asian, and she used to work at a store close to UC Irvine, and the store had a lot of folks who worked there of Asian descent. And so she says she finished the holiday season and received a note saying, if you don't have a paycheck, you've been let go. So she spoke to the assistant manager, who said that after the corporate visited the store, they had noticed a lot of Asians working there, and that the store was told by corporate that they needed to hire more people that looked like the Abercrombie and Fitch models, meaning white people. And she says it's really hurtful. If that had happened to me, I would have been furious.
Yeah, but she also says, what do? You were 21 years old at the time. You just don't know what to do.
There's another person that we hear from named Dr. Anthony Ocampo. Now he's Filipino, and he also worked at Abercrombie and Fitch in a store. And he says one day he went to the store and was told they couldn't rehire him because they already had too many Filipinos working at the store.
I like how he paused after he said it, like in real life. I bet that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Someone said that, and then he paused and said, are you serious?
These three folks, Anthony, Jennifer, and Carla, were 3 of 9 people who filed a lawsuit against Abercrombie and Fitch based on race, based on being either fired or not hired by Abercrombie and Fitch because of the color of their skin, of their ethnicity.
The attorney for all of the people who are in this lawsuit says that it was very obvious that Gap, Old Navy, Banana Republic were all hiring people of all ethnic groups, but at Abercrombie and Fitch, it was only white people.
Abercrombie, meanwhile, responded to the lawsuit. Listen to this. In the lawsuit, they said that it was not about them being racially discriminated against. It was that they were just not pretty enough.
Like that makes it better.
Like that makes it any better.
Whoever is letting them say this stuff publicly, I wrote, either hates them and wants them to lose, or they're not the brightest crayons in the box, because that is insane.
Abercrombie and Fitch ended up settling the lawsuit for $40 million, but they admitted no guilt.
Mm-hmm.
The settlement stated that Abercrombie and Fitch needed to enter into a consent decree to change their recruiting, hiring, and marketing practices, and they had to be monitored by a court-appointed monitor for 6 years. However, there would be no penalties if they missed any benchmark. Part of this dissent decree, Abercrombie and Fitch had to hire a diversity officer. So a guy named Todd Corley was brought in as chief diversity officer, and he would report straight up to the top of the company. They needed to figure out how to rebrand Abercrombie and Fitch for diversity and inclusion. And he says when he started, 90% of the company population was white. And by year 5 or 6, 53% were non-white in stores. One of the things that happened after this as well is brand reps were no longer brand reps, meaning like the people who worked in the store, they were no longer considered to be brand reps. They were divided into 2 different categories. They were called impact employees. And now impact employees worked in the back of the store. Or there was another group called models. And models worked in the front of the store where everybody could see them.
They found a loophole.
Yeah.
That's how they can get away with still having good-looking people work at the front of the store, by calling them models.
Yep. So realistically, the consent decree didn't change anything within the actual structure.
No.
While all this was going on, we hear from Bobby Blankenship, the armpit guy, that says the former photographer named Bruce Weber, who was the one who took all the Abercrombie and Fitch pictures for all the magazines and all the photography for Abercrombie and Fitch. Bobby says Bruce took advantage of his power within the company. He says that Bruce would invite these male models over, and he would do this thing called good touch, bad touch.
Oh, there are so many layers of cringy in this episode.
There really are. Bobby says a guy would get a call from Bruce, and he would get invited over for dinner. And then after that, you wouldn't see this guy for a couple of days. And he says one evening, he's on a shoot somewhere, and he gets a call from Bruce asking him to come over for dinner. Now, Bobby was like, no, I'm good. And Bruce was like, it'll be good for your career. Come on over, have dinner with me. And he was like, no. And then Bobby says a couple of minutes later, he gets a phone call from somebody telling him to pack his stuff because he's going home. How terrible is that?
Woo!
It's so bad.
It gets worse. What does Ryan say?
It does get worse. So Ryan is the one.
The one, what? Just say it, Jen. I know you want to say it.
You know. Ryan, the one I have pictures up in my locker room.
Okay.
Ryan says that it was very well known that Bruce Weber, the photographer, liked young men. He says he would put your hand on your heart, and Bruce would put his hand on your hand. And then Bruce would say that he was going to lower your hand.
Oh my gosh.
And you tell him when to stop. Now, Ryan says, he didn't do that with me. My hand never moved.
Oh, good for you, Ryan.
But he says another thing that was super awkward was that Bruce Weber and Mike Jeffries, the CEO, would randomly pull models into a tent and they would be interviewing them in the tent. It's so weird.
It's so weird. And Bruce Weber did not respond for requests to comment on the documentary at the time of the documentary. And he has also not been charged or convicted of any wrongdoing, we have to say.
Yes. The show goes on to talk about it, that in the early 2000s, Mike Jeffries was married to a woman. He had a kid. But eventually Jeffries,
he had a life partner who was identified as a man and brought into the company to work there.
Yes. Now, in 2006, you said his name really good.
Benoit Disney Lewis.
That is a cool name.
I know, right?
That's a super cool name. Now, he was a journalist and he was writing for the New York Times Magazine at the time. And he had an interview with Jeffries about Abercrombie and Fitch. Now, in the interview, he says that Jeffries stated that Abercrombie and Fitch is exclusionary. Not everyone can wear our clothes. He states that Jeffries says, I don't want everyone to wear our clothes. They're going after the cool kids, the all-American cool kids. And apparently 2 days after
Benoit
had the interview with Jeffries, he received word that Abercrombie was pulling their partnership from the story, which meant that the story was dead for the New York Times magazine. But he was able to publish the piece in another magazine called Salon magazine. And the article stated, in every school, there are the cool kids, and then there are the not so cool kids. Candidly, we, meaning Abercrombie and Fitch, goes after the cool kids. We go after all attractive, all American kids with a great attitude and lots of friends. I wrote in my notes, what the hell?
I'm sure he has lots of friends.
How terrible is this?
That's pretty bad.
Abercrombie and Fitch just keeps going. They just keep selling graphic tees, their jeans. They just keep going. And that takes us to 2013. Okay. When an activist and a public speaker named Benjamin O'Keefe finds the article that
Benoit wrote more than 7 years ago.
So he started a petition asking Abercrombie and Fitch to apologize for this article and to start making plus sizes.
And this goes viral because it's 2013 now.
It's 2013, and I can honestly remember too, I mean, we're sitting here and I'll be completely honest. I have a butt, I have hips, I'm not a size 2. And at that time though, the body shaming was a total thing. You remember that? Body shaming was a thing. There were stores in malls that were I want to say it was either 1, 3, and 5.
Oh, 5, 7, 9.
That's it.
I remember that store.
That only catered to those sizes.
They only sold those sizes. That's nuts.
It's crazy.
I forgot all about that.
But I'll be honest, when I was in high school, I remember, I said, I bought a scarf at Abercrombie and Fitch because they made clothes that were truly geared to not people of any kind of body shape other than thin.
Right.
Thin and for the men fit. Benjamin O'Keefe said they didn't have anything for plus sizes. Like, I don't even know if extra large was a thing at Abercrombie and Fitch.
I don't know. I never shopped there, thank goodness.
It's just infuriating. Benjamin O'Keefe goes viral because he wants Abercrombie and Fitch to start carrying plus sizes, where Jeffries, the CEO, says he doesn't want plus sizes. Essentially, the message was, if you don't look a certain way, you aren't the perfect size, you don't belong in their clothes.
Woo!
So the chief diversity officer in the show says that there was diversity at the store level, but not in the corporate structure.
What is because they had the impact and the models, so now they fit the diversity.
And that's where there was that bump from 90% white population by 53% was non-white in stores. But that whole thing, like, that did not carry over to corporate.
Yeah.
Apparently, the court-appointed monitor did find that Abercrombie and Fitch missed benchmarks, underrepresenting minorities in marketing and in hiring. So that takes us to 2015.
We meet Samantha. She's a fashion blogger. She's a Muslim woman, and she's wearing a headscarf. And she tells us that she was born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she applied for a job at Abercrombie and Fitch. She was wearing jeans, a shirt, and a black headscarf when she was there for her interview. And a manager told her that she would call her to schedule an orientation, but she never received a call. And she asked a friend who worked there why she hadn't gotten a call. And the friend then asked the manager, what's going on? The manager had called the district manager about wearing a black headscarf. Well, Abercrombie and Fitch at the time had a no black policy, meaning you couldn't wear anything that was black.
That's ridiculous. I would not have fit in with that.
That's right. You always wore black back in the day.
I did. That's like all I wore.
Yeah. Well, it's a very slimming color. I do like a black shirt. So she says the district manager had said that it didn't matter the color of the headscarf. So even if she was wearing a pink headscarf or a blue or purple, that she wasn't allowed to work at Abercrombie and Fitch.
I literally wrote, holy hell.
It's awful.
So bad.
So Samantha gets in touch with an organization called CARE, which stands for Council of American Islamic Relations, and she files a case with EOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And she goes viral. She got supportive messages, but she also says that she received death threats over her religion and her beliefs.
Apparently, she says that people were like, you should go back to where you came from. And she's like, I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Where do you want me to go?
I hate when people use that argument. Go back to where you came from. Okay. Abercrombie lost the case for discrimination and appeals the Tulsa headscarf case.
Which is a terrible name for a case.
Abercrombie lawyers tried to compare her headscarf to wearing a baseball cap.
I wrote, WTF, there's a big difference between a baseball cap and a headscarf.
There is nothing similar except that they both go on your head.
Yes.
This is insane.
Crazy. So I think what goes on next is the most insane thing.
Tell us.
The case went to the U.S. Supreme Court. Abercrombie argued that if they hired Samantha, she would hurt their brand, which in turn would hurt their sales because she didn't fit their look policy. Remember their look policy that we talked about?
Yeah, you had to be good looking, which she is.
She's very good looking. It's crazy. So thankfully, Samantha won the case in the Supreme Court, and the ruling was 8-1. So the Supreme Court found that Abercrombie's actions violated the Civil Rights Act of 1974. And at this point in time, with all of this negativity out there about the brand, Abercrombie was losing money. Teens no longer wanted to wear the brand. You don't want to wear a brand that makes you feel bad about yourself.
You don't want to wear a brand that people think that you're, this type of person.
Exactly. Yahoo published an article in 2016 calling Abercrombie the most hated retailer in the United States.
Well deserved.
At this point, Abercrombie was becoming irrelevant. Exclusion stopped being cool.
It sure did.
And that's when Jeffries resigned. He resigned in 2015 and received a $27 million retirement package. We learn in the show that Les Wexler, who was the head of L Brands, he's also been in a whole lot of scandal and stepped down from CEO of L Brands. This, the show says, was after he was linked to having close ties with Jeffrey Epstein, which we know about Jeffrey Epstein. Mm-hmm. He is a convicted sex offender. And Wexler had apparently let Epstein, according to the show, represent himself as a Victoria's Secret modeling scout. One of the reasons Epstein was always surrounded by really hot young women was because they thought he could help their careers progress, which is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
In 2018, the show says that the New York Times put out an article saying that Bruce Weber, who was the former photographer for Abercrombie and Fitch, sexually exploited male models. And at that point in time, many lawsuits were brought against Bruce Weber. Weber denied the allegations of touching anyone inappropriately to the New York Times. And one of the lawsuits was dismissed in 2020. Another 2 sexual assault lawsuits by former models were settled in 2021. And we don't know how much money
what they settled for. Yeah.
But there was no admission of guilt, the show says. The documentary states that there are no reports of models alleging any sexual misconduct by Mike Jeffries.
Right.
In 2017, Abercrombie and Fitch brought in a new CEO. Fran Horowitz says in a statement that she is focusing on listening to customers. She wants larger sizes that fit more body types, and she wants diversity in the models. And she basically rebooted the brand. And even so much so that in 2021, they had a Pride collection, which I don't think would have ever happened under Mike Jeffries.
No. And they end with a clip from SNL, which I just thought was so funny. It was Colin Jost doing his news update skit, and his joke is, Abercrombie & Fitch has announced plans to no longer hire employees based on attractiveness, which should make the first new guy they hire feel real great. That's terrible.
That's so terrible.
It made me giggle, but it is terrible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, so Abercrombie and Fitch recently was kind of back in the news. So after watching the show, I just kind of wanted to know a little more about what's new with Abercrombie and Fitch. So according to the Department of Justice, in October of 2024, former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, Mike Jeffries, who is 80 at the time, and 2 other people were charged with sex trafficking and interstate prostitution.
Crazy.
Mike Jeffries, his partner Matthew Smith, and a recruiter named James Jacobson, a Department of Justice press release says, arranged for dozens of men to travel to New York and hotels around the world for sex events. The indictment alleges that Jacobson was employed by Jeffries and Smith to recruit, interview, and hire men to perform commercial sex acts for Jeffries and Smith.
Cringe.
Terrible.
This is so cringy, this whole thing.
Terrible. Forbes magazine in December of 24 released an article stating that Mike Jeffries' attorney released a statement saying that Jeffries has dementia and late onset Alzheimer's and may not be fit to stand trial. According to the article, a competency hearing will be held in June of 25 to determine whether or not he's even fit to stand trial. Now, in February of 25, I found an article from the Villanova School of Law on their commercial sexual exploitation page. Like, That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Apparently, the article states that all 3 men have pled not guilty and are currently out on bail. And if convicted, Jeffrey Smith and Jacobson was the one who had been hired as a recruiter, allegedly, each face a minimum sentence of 15 years in prison and a maximum sentence of life in prison for the sex trafficking charge. And the interstate prostitution charge carries a maximum sentence of 20 years as well.
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
It's so crazy. Yeah. So we will definitely keep you updated on that.
Yeah, I mean, it started off really light, with the music and the mall culture.
Yeah.
Boy, does it get dark.
Yeah. I think it's also for me one of those things like you kind of wonder then. So clearly we know about like the Abercrombie and Fitch structure where it's like hot people and those are the people like representing the brand, but it makes you really wonder about other brands too.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, realistically, so we all know that Victoria's Secret has rebranded drastically from the way Victoria's Secret used to market. They would have these incredibly gorgeous, super hot models, where now Victoria's Secret has rebranded itself to be more size inclusive. I believe Victoria's Secret had a fashion show a couple of months ago, and they also had some people who they deemed to be plus size models. And
I think a lot of the brands are doing this, which I appreciate, because when I shop online, it's really difficult, to figure out if something's going to fit you.
Exactly.
Because obviously you're not seeing it or touching it. You don't know what it's going to look like on your body, but you see it on a really thin model and everything looks good on them.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate how a lot of them are using different body types. So I can see how it looks on one body type and like the same piece of clothing on different body types. It makes my decision easier. Like, okay, this looks like my body type. It's fitting them well. I'll go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I feel like I've said it before in this, like, I feel like we're finally getting to a point where we're finally accepting more bodies in our culture. And it's like thank goodness.
Yeah.
Like, it's finally time, like everybody is beautiful.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if how much you weigh. It doesn't matter.
I just want to say, I thought everybody was pretty good looking in this thing.
Everybody was
the people that they were saying were not good enough to work in these stores. I was shocked.
They were all very pretty.
You cannot argue that they're not good looking people.
I feel like this documentary was truly eye-opening because I would have never thought about this kind of stuff if I walked into an Abercrombie and Fitch store. Well, we would love to hear from you. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram, Two Crime Newsies. You can email us
at twocrimenewsies@gmail.com. Please give us a rating.
Yes, please.
You can rate us on Apple Podcasts. You can rate us on Spotify. I would appreciate 5 stars.
That'd be nice. Yes. 5 stars are great.
Yeah. And leave us a little note. We want to hear from you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will talk to you guys again in a week. Thank you for joining us. Bye.